What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now let's get cozy and start today's episode. If you're looking to be inspired, feel worthy, and in the flow, then this episode of the Lead with Love podcast is for you. In today's conversation, I get cozy with my friend Lana Shlafer. Lana is a life mastery expert, speaker, and online course creator. And through her videos, meditations, courses, and events, Lana has helped thousands turn pain to gain, manifest miracles, and master their lives. The way that she shows up in the world, just fully expressed, full of joy. I know that you're going to be super inspired by this conversation. She also hosts manifesting challenges where over 20,000 people have joined her and experienced extraordinary breakthroughs. Lana has also been featured on television and in popular publications such as TVOne, NPR, and the Huffington Post. She resides in Puerto Rico with her 3 kids and husband and is working on her first book. So let's get cozy with Lana. Hello, hello.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I feel like we were just laughing and I feel like every time we get together, there's a lot of like joy and like vibrational explosion that happens in our conversations.
Because we have so much to explode about. and we explode about topics that most people wouldn't explode about, like challenges and growth and pain, so we've broadened our vibrancy to lots of other areas. And I encourage everyone to include everything into the zone of what you can enjoy.
Yeah. And I remember, Lana, that I first discovered you, actually, we were in Marie Forleo's B School program and just saw you and your post. And then somehow I followed down a thread and I was so mesmerized by your dance videos that you would post on Facebook and Instagram. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this girl has so much soul, so much embodiment. And there was reggae, there was hip hop, there was some Drake, the gamut of music that you would listen to, and just the freedom and the full expression. So that's how I first kind of saw you and first fell in love with you, of this girl is just fully on fire and just embracing who she is. And I'm curious, for you, what was your intention in sharing these little mini dance breaks that you would just share on social media?
Talk about things just happening all on their own, really. I joined B School because I wanted to move my online yoga and coaching practice. At that time, I was doing more yoga as well online. And I, was doing all the things that everyone else was doing, working on my website and all that, but I really needed to take breaks. And dance is something that I've always loved, and it's been in my life. Sometimes I did classes and I danced ballroom when I was really young. And then in college, I danced salsa on a troupe and performed. But really, I wasn't dancing anymore. It's been years and years, in any kind of organized capacity, but it was just the best way that I could drop in my body. And I think I did one random dance break video. I just said something like, this is how I take breaks in between, writing blog posts. And it went crazy. And I got so many comments and I was like, that's what you guys want to see? Just me. I mean, it wasn't choreographed. I wasn't doing some amazing moves. I was just like when you watch kids dance, they're just so happy, right? That's how I feel. And then people asked for more. And so I've just been doing them for all these years. There's not usually any kind of tie-in to my products or to anything. it's something that I love so much that I love to share. And, I get a full spectrum of comments. Some people like you say, oh, I love that you choose all this different music and I love you dancing. Some people will say, well, I can't dance. That's always the one that like breaks my heart a little. I'm like, of course you can dance. If you can move, you can dance. Like it's not about choreography. And then I have some people that, could be kind of critical. And I always chuck those off too. Like, hey, if you want to do your fancy dance moves, go for it. But like, I'm just here to have fun. And it's amazing to me how people have resonated. I feel like in dance for that moment, and it's really not even the dancing, it's the music. I just feel like it speaks to my soul and it moves me. Like the music dances me. And I think that people can just feel alignment. That's really what they resonate with, is that they feel that I lose myself almost. And it's a spiritual experience for me. And so whenever people share something that moves them, I think others can feel it and they resonate with it. So it's funny that that's how we connected, but I feel like I've attracted the best kind of people through that, because anybody who's too prudish or uncomfortable in their body or whatever is not going to watch those videos. And so they're not in my orbit, and that's for everyone.
And I think that's an important message, right? To be, lost in yourself and to be that where you're like, this is how I get into my body, and it's a spiritual practice, and all of those pieces of being able to repel people who don't resonate, and being okay with that. And I'm curious if there was ever any part of you, when you were getting those first few criticisms or people like not on board with it, did you have any hesitancy or reaction of like, well, maybe I shouldn't share as much? Or were you like,
It's interesting because when I was pregnant, those are my videos that went most viral. I have at this point 8-year-old twins and a 2.5-year-old baby. And I didn't do videos when I was pregnant with the twins, though I did dance. And I remember walking into a Zumba class, like 7 months pregnant, and the instructor being like, are you sure you should be here? And I was like, oh yeah, they love to dance. So let's go. But I did these videos throughout my business and my pregnancy. And there were so many people, like I had over 1 million views on one video because I was doing whatever I was doing before I was pregnant. I don't think that pregnancy really changes what you can do. And I've been living proof of that. But I got some comments about like, oh my God, she shouldn't be moving like that. Like that is inappropriate. Or like, why are her feet so swollen? She's got hobbit feet. And like, just like, come on, stuff like that. And I remember looking at this and just thinking, I can't believe that somebody would take the time to write that comment. That's usually what I think about. And a lot of times I just delete them and move on. There were a few times, one time where I actually responded to quote unquote a bully. And I just kind of wrote and said something about, I really love myself and I love showing something that makes me happy. And if it doesn't resonate, then I understand. And it was amazing because the reply was, I'm so sorry. It was from a guy. I'm so sorry I wrote this. I was in a really bad place. Thank you for replying with love. And I take particular joy out of loving those that don't feel lovable. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that is extra juicy. So yeah, sometimes it's a little annoying. I have a mole on my face that I've had from birth, and I'll have like 100 comments on a YouTube video talking about the content, and then one comment saying, if you can manifest anything, why don't you manifest cutting that mole off your face or something like that? And again, like, it's just absurd, really. Yeah. And I think that, send them love. If that's where those people are, more power to them. But usually I just don't engage. The only times that criticism has reached me deep, there was one time when I did a video and I was so vulnerable and I ended up removing it from my blog and removing the video. And that was a great lesson for me, is I had mixed feelings about, it wasn't a dance video. It was an actual content video about, moving through pain or manifesting something. I can't remember what it was, but I realized that I had mixed vibration around it, meaning I was torn within myself on this topic. And I did a video, but I didn't fully believe what I was saying. And so all the comments that were negative really got to me because I had that trigger in me already. So that's stuff I needed to clean up. I removed the video, I removed everything, and I worked on that, whatever it was, that topic. I can't remember, it was years ago. And I did a new video that was much more aligned with me. So that's kind of how I generally deal with it.
Oh, there's so many pieces. One, I love the reply of, I really love myself. That is so powerful to allow that to be your response to criticism. And then the piece of, feeling triggered and a little bit unshaky of like, oh, I'm actually not ready to share this part in this way at this time, and allow yourself to reset, realign, and get clear within yourself so that when you do bring something for the public to judge and criticize, you're in a very grounded and empowered space. And I always love to start with this question, but I just had to share about the dance piece is what attracted and magnetized me towards, wanting to get to know you. And I know recently we finally got to meet face to face, in the Bay Area. I feel like we've been trying.
And you give the best hugs. I love good hugs.
Yeah. And I know we've been trying to coordinate like an in-person gathering for so long. And I know both of our husbands are Filipino, and I'm always telling my husband like, oh, we need to all get together. So I just love that we've been able to actually connect in real life. But I'd love to just ask you, what does leading with love mean to you? And how do you put love into practice in your business? And I know that we already started with this one of just replying and owning and declaring like, I really love myself, and replying with love. How would you answer that question?
I feel like what it goes really back to is my philosophy on all of life. And that is a basic assumption that before I had it, none of the stuff I'm going to say now really would make sense. And after I had that assumption, everything made sense, which is the outside world, every interaction I have, every experience, every opportunity is a reflection of my own inner state of being. And so when I talk about leading with love, I'm talking about having such a vibrational experience of love within myself that I can create that experience outwardly. And a lot of times the biggest shifts that I've had were when either I felt unlovable within myself and I made my way into love. And sometimes it's a little bit, being in the jungle with a machete. It feels like, you're just making your way out of no way. And then being able to also love the unlovable people, love the unlovable circumstances. It's something this is definitely more advanced, I would say, in terms of how other people talk about law of attraction, spirituality, and even entrepreneurship, in that I feel like resisting resistance is still resistance. So when somebody attacks you, when you feel fear, when you feel, I don't believe in meeting that by pushing against it, because you just created more resistance in your own life and maybe in the life of that person. But loving resistance creates more love. And what does that look like? I spent a lifetime discovering that question and really moving towards freedom within myself. Can I love the unlovable? And I've had to really move into places of injustice. I have such a righteous kind of personality where I want the world to be just. And it's I'm a Capricorn. I really feel it in my bones. I feel like things should be equal. And I spent a lot of time in my, early years really fighting against the machine in one way or another, whether it was my parents or within myself or within the society. And what I realized is it wasn't adding to my life much. I didn't see a huge result, and I didn't feel like it was making such an impact in the world. And in the end, I realized I want the impact in the world, and I want to have it within myself because I believe that's what creates, I always say, if you want to be inspiring, be inspired. If you want to be loving, love. And so the short answer is, if I find that I am not being loving, I am grateful for the opportunity to expand into greater love. And the assumption that I made is that is really the only thing worth doing in this lifetime. And that is what my life is about. That is what the universe is about. And so it influences every decision. And it doesn't mean that I'm perfect and that I don't hit against challenges and resistance, but it means that I'm looking for a way to love that resistance instead of pushing against it. And I think that that's a difference that's happening in the self-growth circles or the coaching circles, where people are starting to understand that rah mentality, conquer your fear, do it anyway. And I feel like that's a little bit old school nowadays. It's motivation versus an intrinsic inspiration. And it's fighting against something. Mother Teresa had this saying that if you have a rally against war, I won't be there. But when you have a rally for peace, count me in. And it's that shift to realize that pushing against what you don't want is only going to get you deeper into what you don't want. But really focusing and bringing forth what you do want is what enhances that in your life and in this world.
Can you tell me about a time when you did push against resistance?
Yeah. I mean, I have so many examples. I'm such a fiery personality. I think that's why I'm such a good teacher of it, because I've needed to become such a good student. I mean, I have a huge ego, and I mean that in the best way. Like, I really, am an intense person, let's put it that way, a type A kind of personality. But over time, I realized that I can soften the edges. I don't have to change myself. So one example would be that I had an amazing home birth with my twins. I was in grad school when I got pregnant with them, studying transpersonal psychology. My husband just proposed, and we got pregnant 2 months after he proposed, or like immediately after, basically. And so I had to deal with a pregnancy that was a twin pregnancy and a move. And I had to really put everything that I've been learning in terms of psychology, spirituality, law of attraction to the test, because in the US, it's really very medicalized, the birthing experience, and especially with twins. And so I was able to create this epic, extraordinary, unbelievably magical birth with them. They were born at home over 6 days. They were born 33 hours apart. I manifested an angel of a midwife. I mean, the whole thing had a miracle after miracle after miracle. But what happened after the birth is where I hit a lot of resistance. And this is something else that I share a lot, is that you're going to have something called a clarity hangover a lot of times. Or another way of putting it is, after the expansion comes the contraction. And that naturally happens. Like after a peak experience, let's say you go to a retreat, or, you travel somewhere and you have this absolute peak amazing experience, well, you're going to have a contraction as you try to integrate that into your daily life, right? And that's a healthy process that once we embrace and understand, we can really accept. But when you don't understand it, you're thinking, why am I going backwards? Why can't I sustain that level of energy or happiness or whatever it is? And so after the birth of the twins, rode that high for maybe a few days, and then spent the next few weeks absolutely killing myself trying to nurse these kids and take care of them. And I ignored all the signs that my body was giving me of absolute exhaustion. I wasn't really great at asking and receiving help. And to make a really long story short, we ended up moving when they were 5 weeks old. That's a different story. But I ended up in the hospital with severe mastitis. And there's a whole story how it led up to it. There were little signs that I ignored and bigger signs, and I tried to deal with it, but still pushing against it because I was not willing to give them formula. I was not willing to not hold my babies. I basically ran myself into the ground completely because what I know now is I activated all this old patterning, ancestral patterning of being a martyr. It's a very Russian thing, and very much in my family, that this is how you love. You just kill yourself for your children. And when I ended up in the hospital, I had such a bad infection, they ended up having to do surgery. And I ended up being in the hospital for 4 days, not seeing my 7-week-old newborns. All the milk that I had stored was used up within a few hours. They had to go on formula anyway. They couldn't see me because I had this strain-resistant bacteria that they were worried I would infect the kids. So I had literally manifested the worst thing I could imagine, short of the kids being in the hospital, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I had this pause that I created forcefully, where I was like, why am I pushing against this so hard? I mean, I literally told my husband in one night, I will rather cut my right arm off than give them formula. I was so adamant about, and I just saw it as black or white. I just saw it's either this or that, and there's no in between, which turns out there's a lot in between, there's all kinds of shades in there, and I could choose the one that resonates. And so it was there that I had this aha moment that, look, I can just use my will to move forward on my goals and my intentions. I can. I have that will of steel sometimes that just propels me forward. But it is typically an experience that has a very high cost. And I'm not willing to pay that sacrifice. And the realization I had was, I love these children so much, but what am I modeling for them? That I love them more than I love myself. And I already had enough of that in my childhood. No, thank you. Like I knew I had to stop this pattern of fighting. So right there in the hospital, I said, well, I don't know how I'm going to find my way out of it, but I'm going to stop pushing against. And so we came out, I stopped doing the crazy, insane feeding schedule that this lactation consultant told me, if I don't do it, basically my kids will not develop and die. And I mean, I manifested so much fear-based stuff on the heels of an amazing birth where I literally did the impossible and followed my intuition to the T. It's like I contracted and forgot about it all of a sudden. And then after that surgery that I had, and I have the beautiful scar to prove it. I would never remove the scar. It's such a good memory for me. It's right on my breast. And it's like this beautiful reminder that I'm done fighting anything. Mm-hmm. I reclaim my power by recognizing that there's nothing to fight, that I can embrace what is happening and I can focus on what I do want. So I focused on my kids being healthy and me being healthy and me being well. And within a few weeks, I was actually nursing them quite easily without any force. And they were the formula percentage went down, 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 and they ended up being almost exclusively breastfed anyway, but there was no resistance. And my milk flowed and things just started aligning. That was probably the most intense experience of contrast in the last few years that I had, where it literally landed me at the hospital. And now when I start to feel that kind of resistance rising, where I feel like I gotta fix this, like this is wrong, this is bad, I kind of remind myself that if I continue down this path, I will end up in the hospital or worse. Like I know the intensity and the speed with which I can move into resistance. And so it's been a good wake-up call for me that I still use to this day. And I think all of us should use our previous experiences or the experiences of those around us as wake-up calls for ourselves to say, okay, this might be something that is familiar to me, but it isn't something that I want to continue into my future. So I've got to make some adjustments.
Yeah. And something that's so powerful is being able to witness that pattern of resistance coming up inside of you. And then like, oh, this is an indicator of change.
Yep.
Like we've got to pivot and wake ourselves up from that kind of automatic patterning. And I know you mentioned, law of attraction, and what you support your clients with today is around mindset and manifesting miracles. And I feel like you are a walking miracle, and constantly they're just like unfolding moment by moment. I am curious about your spark moment of when did you discover the path of this conversation, of this way of living and thinking and being with law of attraction and manifesting and mindset? What was like, where were you before you discovered it and how you went into that world? And I know you do it at an even deeper, more advanced level of really raising not just yourself, but the clients that you serve at a higher vibration. But I'm just curious of like the Lana before.
Yeah.
And then how did you discover, what was your spark moment in that?
Well, the greatest thing that I feel like has kept me going really before I go into the initial kind of spark, which there were a few, is that the spark is there for me. Like I keep discovering. That's why it keeps my interest. That's why I keep diving deeper, because I have so far not reached a limit of my imagination or what I can create in my life. So the spark is ongoing. It's a juicy, exciting, like passionate relationship that I have with life. So I don't love the term law of attraction, mostly because most people think of it as some kind of sensationalist and very superficial, I would say, just getting stuff, which you can get stuff. I mean, that's obviously what our physical world is about to some degree. But my biggest aha moments with all of this and again, it's like really hard for me to pinpoint them because there were so many moments looking back that I experienced this kind of alignment or oneness that I didn't even know what was happening. One of those was when I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And for the first 5 days, I thought I was going to die. My thoughts were so judgmental, I thought I would go crazy. I mean, quite literally. So I came from Russia when I was 12 and I really didn't fit in. And it was really painful to adjust to living in the US. And I felt really outcast. I was really bullied. And then my parents went through a divorce and I had an eating disorder for 10 years. off and on really, and it tapered. But I really feel like it wasn't until my late 20s when I got pregnant with the kids that it really healed, like to a complete level, to the point where now it's almost feels like a different person was living it. But at that moment, at that time, there was so much pain and I was seeking answers, but I was looking at behavioral things, right? I was looking at how to fix this problem. And so when I did the silent meditation retreat, which was at a big pivotal point in my life, I was graduated at the top of my class from UC Berkeley. I had 5 job offers out of college. I worked in investment banking. I kept getting promoted. I was earning over 6 figures. I thought I had everything I wanted, and I felt more depressed and miserable than I ever have. And my binge eating was at my all-time worst. And I ended up quitting that job, which was really on a hope and a prayer. Like I did not know what I would be doing, and moving to Southern California with a guy I just met. Like the whole thing was crazy. My parents thought I'd lost my mind. I was like the uber responsible, had my future planned out person. And all of a sudden I was like, I can't do this anymore. I want to die. So I might as well see what else is out there. And so on my way to Southern California, I stopped and did from Northern California to Southern California, I stopped and did this meditation retreat. And the first half of it, I really couldn't be in silence. I just had so much judgment and so much pain, honestly, that I had suppressed over the years. The pain of feeling like I don't belong anywhere in the world, the pain of being ripped off from my family. You know, I came here with my mom, dad, and my brother to the US, but I left all my uncle, grandfather, aunts, like everyone I knew. The pain of feeling not good enough, the pain of being a refugee. My dad's Jewish, and that's how we came here, and feeling segregated against and all that, and all kinds of other pain that was there. And what happened as I sat with these thoughts, and that's what the meditation retreat really gave me, is I reached a place beyond them. And so for the first time, I realized that there's a place beyond thought. And that rocked my mind. And I realized towards the end of the retreat that I didn't want to come out to talking to the world. I could have been a monk. I really felt it in my bones that I reached a point of peace beyond the human drama that I had experienced for all of those years. And then I got back in the drama and I lived my life, and I worked for this company that did success coaching with university students. That was my first training as a life coach. And then when that job ended, I ended up doing a yoga teacher training in Mexico. And that was the first time somebody handed me a Law of Attraction, Abraham Hicks, a workshop CD. And when I listened to their workshop, it's like everything made sense. Like they were speaking directly to me. And by they, I mean this woman that channels infinite intelligence, which sounded like a complete crock of BS to me. And I honestly didn't believe in any of that channeling, but as I listened, it gave me value, which is what I encourage everyone to do, is like, you don't have to believe everything that somebody says or even look at the source, but you can receive the value. And so I received so much value that I started diving deeper. I started going to Agape Spiritual Center, where Michael Beckwith was at the time. And mind you, I grew up completely atheist. The word God gave me like heebie-jeebies, because I just thought that was an artificial construct that humans created because they are stupid. I mean, that's not really what I meant, but that's kind of, my dad's a PhD level mathematician, all logic. He just feels like religion is for those that aren't feeling empowered. And so I had to work through a lot of inner blocks. But again, the value I was receiving was so good. I was willing to be there with like 60% feeling good and 40% feeling uncomfortable. But it was, the right ratio is in the right direction. And so as I had these moments of feeling moments of peace, moments of love, moments of like, I can breathe. Like I felt safe within myself and in this environment. I can let love in. Those have all kept me going. And then eventually, I did a lot more studying on it. I've been to all the Abraham Hicks workshops, cruises, been in the hot seat, did my training in grad school, taught yoga and all, like I've then added layers onto it. But the initial moments were this break in my patterning of anxiety, fear, and pain. And it showed me what's possible. And I've sort of been going ever since to see how much I can make that my daily reality.
Yeah. And there's this post on Instagram that you shared. You said, choose to take the path less traveled and go with those you love.
I mean, is there anything better than that? Don't you want to discover instead of just, live and do what everyone else has done and then die?
And I know you talked about, coming from Russia and then to, the United States and being in California. And where in the world are you right now?
Well, funny you should say that because I am looking out of my window here at the gorgeous aqua ocean in Puerto Rico. I just moved here and it's been amazing to do another move. And interestingly, or not so interestingly, because this is how it works, right? A deeper level of healing has showed up for me because this is the first move that I've done outside the country, I would say. I mean, I've moved within the US, but more or less to, everyone spoke English there and it was more or less kind of the same environment, different city, but for the most part, culturally, similar enough. This is a different culture. A lot of people here don't speak English, even though it's a US territory. The way people drive is different. I mean, laws are different. Everything is different. And it's triggered some of that deeper level of healing, a feeling like a foreigner, a feeling like I don't belong. And I've had some amazing breakthroughs here to really embrace parts of myself that I think I kind of left when I was 12. Yeah. It's been a lot of tears, a lot of healing. I've reached out for some more coaching and healing work, which I do when I know that I could use somebody else to hold space for me. It's been a really beautiful experience. But again, now I have the understanding of this is welcome. Like I don't have to fight the pain that's showing up. And a lot of times it shows up very subtly. Like I'm just irritable and I'm snapping at, my family, or I'm like, I can't even put a finger on what's happening, except I just hate it, whatever it is. I just hate this and I don't want to be here. And, to go into that resistance, that's the art. And again, it's so juicy. There's so many gifts in it. And one of the things that I love to open people's life experience to is that no experience is good or bad. It is neutral. And whatever meaning you assign to it is what you will derive from it. So color it good. How can I color a car accident good? Well, I've done that before. I ended up meeting the most amazing person that rear-ended me and realizing that I was moving too fast and I really needed to slow down, and it led to breakthrough. So even bad things in our life, like the hospital experience that I described, it gave me so many gifts. Would I wish it on myself or someone else again? No, I wouldn't. But did it bring me a ton of value and gifts? Yes. And it could be both and. It could be painful and fulfilling, and meaningful, at least. It could be, frustrating, and it could lead to breakthroughs. Like it really is how we approach those situations that really makes a difference. And some of the people that I find most masterful in life, from, the yogis in the Himalayas to the amazing business owners and powerful people that are able to create a huge positive impact in the world, I see that common thread is that they are not afraid of any circumstance because they know that they are going to find the value in it. And it's almost like, a really like tennis player, like Serena Williams or Venus, right? They're wanting to play challenging opponents. They're like, bring it on, because I'm either going to win or I'm going to learn. That you want to stretch your capacity, and life will deliver that to you. And sometimes in the most interesting, Mother Teresa had this quote again. Mother Teresa seems to be coming up a lot today. She said, somebody asked her, why do you go to all of these places where the people have leprosy and all these diseases and everything? How do you handle it? Orphanages where there's a lot of pain. And she said, everywhere I look, I see Christ in his distressing disguises. It's just a disguise, is the way that I look at it. Yeah. And I can see beyond it. And that belief has really served me well. And that's why I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Try it out. This is what I show people in my programs. Don't just listen to me. Actually do these exercises and these practices. Show this to yourself, and you will, be able to understand how it works and use it for the rest of your life. Because it's not something that's a rhetoric. It's an actual lived experience that you need to have.
What's one of those exercises that you do with your clients that just one, when you see someone actually live it, embody it, try it on for themselves, that it lights you up, guiding them through that process. But is there a specific exercise that you just love? Like this is where you start, or this is where you lean in?
There are a few, and a lot of times I will do quite a long warm up so that I build people's trust, even in my completely evergreen programs where they don't get to connect with me directly, right? They're doing it online. There'll be a long warm up where they kind of get to know themselves a little bit, start off with focusing what is working in their lives. And then I'll kind of throw in this, formative life experiences exercise, where you start off by looking at 3 life experiences that have been very challenging in your life. And you realize that, they're still with you today, because if you go into that emotion and you still feel a lot of emotion, it's still relevant to you today. And then I have them think about and write out about this experience and what do you call that word? Sieve out, extract 1 or 2 feelings that they had during that emotion. So it could be abandonment. It could be unworthiness. It could be, some sort of painful experience. And then I have them focus or just literally find the opposite word, like as an antonym, right? What is the opposite of, feeling misunderstood? It would be to be understood. What is the opposite of feeling unworthy? It's feeling worthy. And so to be able to understand that all of those experiences of not having, and people, I attract not just the, some sort of population that has not had any trauma or I've attracted people that have been through the foster care system and have been abused left and right and had some really what you would consider the worst of human experiences. And so I try to make it as safe as possible for them to, in a general sense, be able to understand that that pain that they lived had a theme, and that the rest of their life, they're going to be looking to fulfill that theme. And then I have them talk about the 3 most amazing experiences they've had in their life. And so I sandwich it, right? Because now they warmed up with a lot of really good feeling things. They did this challenging one, and now we're going to focus on really good feeling things again. And a lot of times when they do the most amazing formative life experiences, like in their childhood, would form their life, they will realize that they had very similar themes. So it's almost like they had the yin and the yang, right? They didn't get something. And so the most rewarding experience of their life is where they felt that what they were lacking so badly in the challenging experiences, they were triumphant in it. So they felt seen, they felt worthy, they felt successful, they felt whatever it is. And that really blows people's minds a lot of times. And then we, continue working with those experiences in further exercises. But really the basic conclusion from that exercise is that, oh my God, that pain was really, like Rumi says, the crack through which the light can enter.
Yes. Oh, and I think that, we were talking a little bit about worthiness before we hit record. And I think it's such a strong theme as women in this world and humans in general. But I know that you actually have a specific guided meditation around this. So I'd love to know a little bit more about it.
Yes. So I have I think it's an 11-minute I am worthy meditation. I call it an affirmation meditation. And this is really recommended because of my therapy background. I actually find that traditional breath meditation is contraindicated with people with a lot of trauma or PTSD, or when that flares up, that they actually don't want to be in their body, and it will trigger a response in the body that is unsafe. So I would never want to encourage that in anyone. So this meditation is used by a lot of people who aren't, quote unquote, comfortable or good at traditional meditation, because there are these statements that you end up repeating to yourself. And a lot of people end up falling asleep with it or doing it first thing in the morning. But, I have a perspective on worthiness that has evolved over time. And I talk about it a lot, but I do it in a really funny way because I don't believe that we can ever feel worthy. So let's start with that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is trying to prove something to ourselves or to someone else that doesn't need any proving. So it would be like me trying to gather all the warmth from the sunshine, every day being like, is the sun going to come out? And sitting there and soaking up all the sun rays and not like really even be able to realize that this is something you can count on every day, and even when there are clouds, the sun is still out. Just accept it as it is and move on to other things that matter to you. Like go on with your day. And so for me, the way that I define worthiness is your capacity to give yourself permission to feel good. And so my worthiness, I've had limits to, like, for example, when that experience with the twins were young and I ended up in the hospital, I couldn't give myself permission to stop nursing, even though that would have felt better. Like even for that hour, even for that day, even for that, I needed a break, but I couldn't give myself permission. I didn't feel worthy of it. I felt like they were worthy of the things I was giving to them, but I wasn't worthy of it. So you can look at worthiness in that way, but ultimately it is so wrong in the Western society that, and in America, all that Puritan stuff comes out a lot of times. It is so wrong for most of us to really focus on pleasure and feeling good. Like it is not what we were taught. Or as a matter of fact, we're probably taught out of it. Like if it felt good, that was a bad thing, And so to slowly start to stretch the capacity of you doing things, making decisions, thinking about things in a way that feels slightly better to you. And that is different for everyone. This isn't a cookie cutter thing. It feels good to me to dance and to record videos and put them up. That's probably not what it feels good, not the best feeling that somebody else can imagine. And that's okay. We all have our inclinations and the things that currently make us feel good, but to give yourself permission, and it does come down to permission. And a lot of people will wait until their back is completely against the wall, like I was when I was in the hospital, to finally give it. And so I've made a commitment to myself to not wait till my back is against the wall as much as I can.
Yeah. A curiosity that I have, the permission to feel good, to feel the pleasure. And I know something as I've been working on writing my next book, one thing that I've written around this conversation is that feeling of guilt of like, why me? Who am I to, when there is suffering in the world or other people, like that my joy could be taken away from someone else, even though that it's not true. But those are, especially for people who really love to serve, make a difference in the world, make an impact, and not wanting to take from anyone else or to not receive as much if someone else is not receiving that. I'm curious, just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, once again, I have a pretty strong opinion on it.
Yeah.
So I realized what a effing hypocrite I've been my whole life being a giver. I think that givers are some of the most selfish people in the world, point blank, is because I realized that I was so quick to give because I felt like, well, other people could use my support. And this makes me, feel like I'm making a difference and I'm doing something good. But really, it was totally for selfish reasons. It made me feel like I was a good person and I was doing a good thing. And there were lots of times when other people wanted to make me feel good and to give me the gift of their presence, of their talents, of their love, of their support, and I wouldn't receive it. And at the same time, I also unintentionally judged those that were receivers, because otherwise, why would I think that receiving was somehow worse than giving? I had somehow judged receiving as to be a less empowered, a worse end of the stick to be on. I'd rather give than receive. And so when I realized that I was judging the receivers that I was supposedly loving and helping, and I was being so selfish by withholding their desire to support me. And I got so much joy of supporting other people, right? So I know that it is a joyous experience for me when I'm not trying to do it from a place of lack. And when I'm doing it from a place of love and overflow, it is such a gift to me to support somebody. I selfishly benefit from it. And those two realizations combined is when I realized, okay, it is my work to really be in the circulation of energy. And that means really making peace with giving and receiving. And it's like a breathing in and breathing out, right? It would be the equivalent of you thinking that breathing out is somehow worse than breathing in, or the other way around. And so, you're probably going to get lightheaded after a while.
Yeah.
You will feel the imbalance. You will feel. And the reason that imbalance is there is because you are cutting off energy. Like from that cycle, Mussolini has this quote that stagnation is death. So anytime you cut off the flow, you will feel that stagnation and a little death really happening. And so for me, it was really about becoming less selfish to learn how to receive. And, that keeps evolving for me in lots of different ways. And, everything that I'm saying, obviously, different people mean different things by the word selfish. I like the word selfful more, or even giving and receiving. I hope that you guys, as Michael Beck would like to say, don't listen to my words, listen to what I'm listening to. Take what you need from this conversation. What I realized is that when I am in that cycle of giving and receiving, I have so much more to circulate. And that is how I serve the world, is that I am able to move more energy. People are always like, how do you do as much as you do with 3 kids, with this? And I'm like, because I'm in the circulation. I'm not blocking it.
That's powerful.
I'm giving, I'm receiving, I'm giving. And sometimes you really can't draw the line. When giving and receiving happen simultaneously, the best experience that most people will have in this, unless they have some terrible sexual trauma, so I do want to give that disclaimer, is during sex. Is that who's giving and who's receiving pleasure when you're making love? I mean, it's both, right? It's one. And that is how I feel the world can operate. And that is what I move towards.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I'm curious, if there are any habits or rituals or routines that you have in place as your source of staying in the flow and not blocking.
Yes, I am not a routine person in general. Like I don't do the same thing every day, but I do some sort of morning alignment practice, as I call it. And that's a big focus in the Manifest Miracles Challenge that I have. That's a course, and the Manifest Miracles Bootcamp, which is a longer, more in-depth course where you have that formative life experience exercise that we just mentioned earlier.
I'll link to that in the show notes too.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I basically help people. I give them, as I think of it, a buffet. And I say, here's a buffet of all this food, go eat. And that's what I do, is I feed my soul every morning. And sometimes it doesn't happen in the morning, but at some point during the day, just like with food, you're going to have to eat or you're going to get real cranky. So I feed my soul frequently the same way that I feed my body. And so that is the only routine that I do. And I have in there all kinds of meditations and centerings, from body scan to breath to mantra. I have all kinds of visioning practices. I talk about these 4 visioning modes. And I am not somebody who likes to do the same thing every day. So I want a variety. And so I try to give a variety and for everyone to try it out. It's almost like if you were to come and take all these forms of dance, not everyone's going to want like the super fast samba. Some people are going to like the waltz, and some people are just going to want the free expression 5 rhythms, and somebody else is going to want hip hop. And so try different things and find what makes you feel good. And by good, I mean, not only do you feel good immediately, which if you don't, try something else. You should feel an instant result. But also you will notice such a huge difference in your day and in your week and in your month. So it's not something that I have to do. People are like, do you make it a strict thing? I'm like, no, like I eat because I like eating and it nourishes my body and I function better. Like I don't have to eat. I guess I could probably starve myself for a week, but it is something that has become such a natural part of my life. And that's something that I encourage for everyone to do, is to be self-full enough to give yourself permission to feel worthy enough to take even 4 minutes. I have this 4-minute ease meditation. We're going to have a lot of links to this episode. That's a free meditation that like thousands of people, at this point, maybe 30,000 people have downloaded and done, where I just feel like everybody has 4 minutes to be able to set the tone for the day. Yeah. Even if it's as simple as that, the value of starting with intent is immeasurable. And it is something that at some point you will realize, wow, it has served me so well. And then you might want to add other practices to it, but really start with something.
Yeah. And I love that, starting with the intent. It's actually something I do even in my Love Over Metrics incubator before we start co-working together, or before we dive into office hours. It's like, what is your intention? And I'm curious, in the last 24 hours, what did you pull from your menu, your buffet, to get in the flow?
Oh, good question. So this morning I did a little centering meditation. I went up to, we have this pool area that has an even better vista than from my room right now. And there were birds, but I do like to sometimes put music on. So I put on some music that had ocean sounds, and I did breathing for, I would say 3-4 minutes. I don't really time it. And then I did some gritting in my journal. Gritting is a practice from Abraham Hicks that I teach in my courses, which is about focusing on good feeling words for you. And that's how I set intention. What do I want to feel today? So, too bad I don't have my journal right next to me. Otherwise I'd read to you. And I'm pretty sure one of the words was pleasure. And meaning. And then I feel into that word. And then I ended up writing about an exciting new course idea that I have, because a lot of times in that space, I download so quickly, I can't write it down enough. Sometimes I'll do voice recordings to myself. Once I open the portal, it's all of a sudden I receive so much clarity, right? And then I ended up doing a little walk and leaving some spoken visioning, as I like to do, with my mastermind buddies, where I left them messages about me already being in the future, when this course that I had just received the idea for was already done and people have already felt the results of it. So that was all, I would say, a total of about 25-30 minutes. I mean, that's probably on the longer end for me. A lot of times I kind of do a 10-15 minute practice. So sometimes I could spend 2 hours, if I have the time. But like I said, it's just something that I pull from whenever I feel inspired, and I like trying different things and nourishing my soul.
I love the fluidity and the freedom and the flexibility to just tune in for that day of, how do I want to feed my soul? I think that is such a beautiful practice and invitation. So I will definitely link to those 2 meditations, because I think they can be so, so helpful. And one question that I wanted to ask you, this was from one of my Lomies, one of the women inside my Love Over Metrics incubator. And I just thought that you would have some good insight on this question. And she said, I'm in a huge season of surrender, huge. I feel solidly confident about what I do and the value I bring, and desperately want to surrender that to the universe instead of feeling like I'm constantly fighting for sales and more clients. How do you balance this? What have you seen others do to balance this? And I know this is more mindset than logistics. And I know for you, it's about mindset and the miracles, manifesting the miracles. And so I just thought that would be a really great question to bring to you.
Well, it's a perfect sequencing from what I just said earlier in my morning practice. My work is to convince myself how valuable whatever it is that I'm putting out is. So I am the biggest consumer of my own things, especially at the beginning, because I'm convincing myself that it's valuable. And if it's not, then I chuck it and I focus on something else, right? I want it to have the impact in my own life, and then I can share that impact with others. And a lot of times I see people putting things out without really 100%, without any shadow of a doubt, knowing that this is the most amazing meditation for this thing, the most amazing course for this thing, the most incredible practice, exercise, tool, whatever it is for this thing. And the work is really to become the person that creates something amazing that you think is amazing, right? I feel like that creates a vibrational stamp on everything you do. And what you realize in the end, at least this is how I approach it, is that by the time I felt into this new course that I want to create, and I have already felt the results that other people will have, and I felt the impact of my result, it feels so fulfilling to me. It's almost like I don't need the sales, because I just already know that it's gold. And I just feel like, well, you're lucky to get it. Like there's no selling happening. really, I mean, like, I'm not selling you guys these meditations. I mean, they're free, but for anything else, I'm like, you are lucky to get all of my tools and expertise all put together in a way that I, have done for all of these other people and continue to refine and made better. It gets better and better and better the way that I'm able to teach these concepts and for people to actually apply them. I feel like there is no one in the world that does what I do. Other amazing people teaching self-love and self-worth and manifesting and all, absolutely. And they do it in their own way. But I know that what I'm creating is so valuable, and that I'll actually add this. The first time I was ever in the hot seat with Abraham Hicks, I asked a question about, how can I do what you do, Abraham, which they do, just mostly talking, right? Bringing people up and discussing with them. How do I do what you do without so many words? And their answer was, follow your inspiration and put together all of the things that you know and test them out and put them out and see which one feels the best to you. And your work is not to find the clients. Your work is not to identify who the clients are or how many of them you need or any of that. Your work is to put out the best that you possibly can, and the right people they just won't just find you. They are already looking for you, which is why you received the idea to create it in the first place. It has already been a co-creation. Focus on your alignment and your inspiration, which goes back to what I say. My work is to stay inspired, not to be inspiring. Being inspiring is a side effect of inspiration. It's, again, giving from the overflow, not from a place of depletion or desperation. And anytime I find myself, and I really had a tough year in 2018, and there was some depletion and there was some not giving from the overflow, and it was very uncomfortable for me. And I had to shut down a program because I was just so not in a space where I felt aligned with what I was doing. And yeah, that contraction was uncomfortable, but it also led to a lot of amazing healing and expansion for me. And so I'm just committed to putting out the best of me and the best of what I know. And I feel like people respond to that. And then I feel like you either love it or you don't. There's no selling involved. You are fortunate to be able to. And I am fortunate to have attracted you, right? It's a two-way reverence.
Beautiful. I love it. So I could have conversations with you for so much more time.
Maybe there's a part two here.
Totally. And I would just love to know, is there a dream, a desire, a wish, an unsung song that is brewing inside your belly that you've been wanting to do that you quite haven't pressed play on yet?
Yes. And it's something that came up in our conversation. I've known that I would write a book, and not just one book, but be very prolific with book writing for many, 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 many years, maybe even in childhood. I love books. I grew up on them. They made a huge impact in my life. I can tell you certain books that, just made a tremendous difference. I still remember passages from them. And so it's been something that I've always known. And I even had this book strategist, and we started putting together this book proposal, and things just hit a lot of resistance. And I haven't pressed play on it. That's not true. I have pressed pause on it because it's not pause on the dream. It's pause on taking action right this moment, because I needed to get to a place where I felt even more inspired in my life. And this big transition that I went through changing how I did my business and ran my coaching practice and moving to Puerto Rico with my family, like all of this was a big part of where now I feel I'm in a very different space that I knew I wanted to be when I wrote the most brilliant thing that I can flow through. Like, it was really important for me that it was sacred and there was space dedicated to it. It wasn't just something that I did for marketing purposes and between all the other stuff I was doing. And, I really wanted it to be, it's like when you have kids, for example, it's still really important that you have date nights and you woo each other with your partner to keep that love and that connection really strong and vibrant and ever growing. And I felt like that's the relationship I want to have with my book. And so I've created the space for it now. So however long it takes, whether it's 3 months or 3 years or 30 years, the timing isn't significant. To me, it's the journey that I've already had and will continue to have with creating something that when I hold it, it brings tears to my eyes because I feel it is so magnificent.
Yes, yes, yes. So as we wrap up, is there anything else we haven't covered that you'd love to share?
These questions are always so interesting because I want it to be a dialogue. I want your listeners to tell me, well, what else do you want to know? Like, how can I support you? Do you want to do a meditation together right now? I feel like there's so much that I could share. But in the end, I feel like what it comes down to a lot of times for me is, listen, you can't get it right and you can't get it wrong. And it's never done. And it's all okay. And the mastery of life or the joy of life is to really live it fully and ride those waves of life and to allow that to be something that you really welcome in your life. And so wherever it is that you are and whoever you are currently being, see if you can celebrate it just a little bit more than you already do. And know that it will change. And I know things will be different. And you might even look back and really realize you're taking a lot of things that you currently have for granted. So I'm a big believer in finding a reason to celebrate and celebrating what is already here, just as much, if not more, than being excited to celebrate other things that are coming.
I love it. It was an absolute joy and pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Likewise, I adore you.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you so much for your heart and attention in listening to Lead with Love. If this message, leading with love in life and business, and remembering the humans and beating hearts behind the numbers and all of that good stuff, I would love for you to take the time to leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people find out about the goodness and helping spreading more love in the world, which we really, really need. So I would really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.